Marcia, so good to see you.
Oh, fine. How are you? Come stai, Francesca?
Molto bene, molto bene. Just so sorry for all this mess, but extremely grateful to see you. It's been such a long time since last time, at least
I,
2 summers. Is that
I
right?
know. I know. I was thinking May 2019, I believe.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
might be. Yeah, and if I properly remember, we tasted together some old vintages of Dolcetto Costa Fossati last time. That was pretty interesting tasting.
I know. I had that actually written down on my notes that I did this amazing Dolcetto tasting at the Vajra winery that totally opened my eyes to Dolcetto. So, yeah, that was an amazing experience for me. So I was glad that you were able to bring out some of those old bottles for us, myself and my colleagues to try. So that was very good.
Always a pleasure. It's a treat for ourselves as well, because as you well know, our winery, even if our family is farming the same area since 1654, so somehow we have this deep connection with the land. It's also true that our grandparents left the countryside. Our father came back and was definitely against his parents' will. So everything he made, he had to fight for that. And we didn't really have the luxury to keep some older vintages apart. So the most incredible thing is always that we do enjoy the best bottles overseas, and usually in United States and Canada we could find some older vintages of us. So last time you were there, that was also very unique, because that was in between a crazy project about trying to understand the value of this beautiful variety called Dolcetto, which always scares people because we might think it's going to be a sweet wine, you know. Dolce in Italian is sweet.
Yeah.
So for the people who couldn't, who haven't seen your notes, but we tasted, if I properly remember, 05, 04, 03 Dolcetto, and then 2001 and 2000. And it was an experience for myself as well.
Yeah, it was
So good.
I have pictures so I can prove it. So first of all, let me say, Francesca, auguri per il tuo recente matrimonio.
Grazie mille, Marcia.
Yeah,
So for the ones who don't speak Italian, so Marcia, she simply said, congratulations for your marriage. Because
yes,
I got married December the 7th, or lockdown, but was beautiful. I'm so grateful we take this almost crazy decision. But so many friends were close to us anyway. So that was
yeah,
unique. Thank you.
yeah. You're welcome. What's his name?
What would you
What,
say?
what is his name?
Is Matteo. Yeah, and it's right
Matteo.
in front of me. He's my supporter in
All
tasting,
right,
pushing,
excellent.
pulling, pouring wines.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So it was actually Kevin who told me about your marriage. So I just wanted to congratulate you on that milestone.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. So now that we're on here, so you talked a little bit about your family history when we first got on here. So how long has your family been in the area now in Barolo?
Yeah, so the oldest documents we could find, the purpose was really trying to understand why we do have this J in the surname. Is a J that we carried until 1919, that the J disappears. So our surname is nowadays spelled with the I, but we carry the old surname into the company name. GD simply stay for Giuseppe Domenico, the two names of my grandpa, because when my father started the company, even if his father was not so happy, but as a way of gratitude for the chance to be able to take care of the exploitation of the family, that's why he named the company after his father. And he kept the J, so the oldest way of doing the spelling of our surname. It might sound weird for you, but you know that when we are learning different letters, the alphabet into Italian, to us, the J, the Y, and the I are kind of like a different kind of I. So the J
Yeah.
is what we call a long I, the Y is a Greek I, and
Yeah.
then we have the classic I, you know, the one that all of us we know. Well, doing some research, we really found that 1654, that's the time, that's the oldest document we could find. So the proving that the family is farming the top part of the hill of Barolo. So this beautiful hamlet called Vernie, super tiny. where the most important hill is called Bricco delle Viole. So Bricco is the Italian word for the top part of the hill of the violets. So we are already introducing an aspect, which is this the floral aspect. We are actually on the western side of the Barolo production area. For the people who are following us that are familiar with the Barolo production area, all of you know is extremely small area. It's just 3 hills, no more than probably 5 miles as a crow flies. In between one and the other, the surface is bigger because it's so much up and down. You know, Marcia is like to move from one place to another. You see on the map and say, "Oh yeah, 2 minutes," and they say, "Damn, so many curves and up and down." And well, so we are on the western side. Western side is the so-called feminine side. It's all about finesse and elegance, and as my 2 brothers say, complexity. First time they say to me is like, I was like, "Hey, really? Did you really say that?" It's like women are complex, and say, yes, actually, it's probably better to be complex than being too basic sometimes. So
yeah. Well, thank you for explaining about the spelling of your name, because it was a question I was going to ask, right? When we see this, GD Vajra with the J, but yet all of you have the I in the last name of your the spelling of your last name. So that was great. Thank you for that.
Very welcome. Yeah.
This is truly a family business, isn't it? I mean, everybody in your family is involved. And Giuseppe, your elder brother, is now the winemaker, correct? And yourself, tell us about what your role is, and Isadora, what his role is, and your sister-in-law is involved as well, and I'm sure now Matteo will be involved. So sort of tell us what everybody in the family does in the business.
Yeah, so first of all, is a couple, and that's the beauty and the strength of our winery. And the point is that when our dad met our mom, he really felt supported, and that's when the fire really became extremely bigger. The 2 of them were crazy enough to share this dream, in the dream of my father. When we think about winemaking nowadays, we're thinking about like a super cool job, and that was actually the idea that our father had back in time, because his idea was he was willing to work hard for 9 months a year, then get so much snow in winter time that his main goal was sitting in front of the fireplace, piles of book, and just reading, getting new ideas, and eventually traveling. And then he realized quite soon that it's not like that. Also, the reason why I fell in love with this job was because his grandfather, Carlin, was this incredible guy who loved to do winemaking. But anytime our father met his grandpa, Carlin, was doing either Sundays or, Easter time or Christmas time. So his memory of his grandfather making wine was actually this beautiful man with a white shirt, sitting on the top part of the table, and amazing dinners and amazing lunch. So that's how our father fell in love with this job. Good food and the chance to work with nature. And then life is actually pretty different. Above all, in the 60s, everybody was escaping from countryside. So we have to imagine that the Langhe and the Barolo production area is extremely different than used to be. First of all, that was the poorest area because we were on the hill and all the work has to be done manual. And still is like that because we do still all the picking by hand. And sometimes we are working the soil just by hand. And at the end of the day, it's hurting your back, But we say the point is that when we see the vine, we always use the Guyot system. So we make little arches. We always say the arches remind the farmer's back. It's never the land that gets close to the people, but it's the people getting close to the land. And this is also an attitude. That's also the way we do treat our nature. We have to treat the soil, the ground, the vines. It's human beings getting closer, so to preserve, so to help. Well, was a hard job. So the strength was when my father discovered my mom was supporting him. So much supporting him that I don't know if you are familiar with the story of the Riesling, Marcia, but it's basically there were few months before their marriage and they offered our father a piece of land right in Fossati, a beautiful crew next to Bricco delle Viole, beautiful southeast exposure, just the sun of the morning, super gentle. And my father went to my mom and said, Milena, what we are supposed to do, if we do buy the land, we won't have money to get married. But if we don't buy the land, that's a unique chance. So since we're going to get married and share our life together, go, choose. That's up to you. And I'm always one like, thanks, Matteo. Didn't ask me anything like that before the marriage, because it was like, okay, that might be a bit stressful,
Yeah.
And the point is that, which was the answer our mom was, Aldo, what we need to get married, you and I, so go and buy the land. And, apart jokes, that was really somehow that was such a help into the decision of getting married with Matteo in such a crazy time. It's like, what we need to get married, you and I. So let's do it. And then when it's going to be time for party, when Marcia is going to be overseas, that's going to be the time for our marriage party. Anytime. We're probably going to party for 2-3 years. We don't know until we get to see all the friends.
Yeah, why not?
And so that's the reason why so many beautiful projects could really breathe and take the energy and be taken care of. We were talking about Dolcetto. We were talking about Dolcetto, Costa and Fossati. Costa and Fossati, the same two crew I mentioned you before, Fossati and Costa, the two opposite sides of the same hill. Those are possibly the last Dolcetto Barolo crew, what we call the MGA, still farm with Dolcetto. But we have to remember, back in time, people used to plant Dolcetto in the best exposure, because Dolcetto is such a delicate variety. And Nebbiolo is very delicate as well for a completely different reason. Nebbiolo is looking for the best exposure simply because it's the very first bud we're going to see, but then it's going to be the last berry we're going to pick. So the exposure to the risk is so high. Dolcetto instead is so delicate that if we say, let's say, tomorrow we go and pick Dolcetto, and tonight the temperature drop down, you can basically see the berries lie on the ground. It's so delicate. So in a time where everybody's looking for Barolo and so little people are looking for Dolcetto, this variety is disappearing, definitely in our area. So the point to us was always to make the best quality Dolcetto, is to make the best quality Barbera and Freisa and Nebbiolo and Barolo, so to make people fall in love with those variety. And it's been a beautiful path, a beautiful research. We discovered so many interesting things, like, when our father was the very first guy who started to vinify the Freisa, that used to be vinified fizzy, sparkling into bone dry, and that led to people being interested about this variety, and then study the DNA, and then figuring out that the Freisa is actually related with Nebbiolo, and then Freisa is one of the kids of Nebbiolo. Say, oh my goodness, we almost pull out all the varieties. So that's when it became so clear that we, as farmers, we have this duty to really let the variety to express themselves in the best way. There's a beautiful expression my mother always used. You always say that the different grapes at Vajra are like the kids. You were asking me what we do. So Giuseppe is in charge of winemaking, but used to be in charge of all the markets and still is following everything. I'm in charge of disaster, as you noticed tonight. No, joking. But, you need a troublemaker. Every family needs one. So easy.
Well, you are the middle child,
so. Yeah, always a tough situation. But Isidoro, our younger brother, we call him Easy. The proper spelling will be ISI, so not like easygoing. But so Easy is in charge of the vineyards. And my mother said, the different varieties are really like the three of us. All of us so different. And the role of a parent is not about pushing everybody to do the same or giving exactly the same thing to everybody, but it's about understanding what each of us we do need and let our personality to bloom and express at the best, because this is the only way we can be creative and we can bring joy and beauty to the world. So that's really that was the approach of our parents with the three of us, and that's how the three of us we find our way. We were never pushed to do this job. Given my character, I will probably go exactly the opposite way around. But it's the three of us, we definitely saw a beauty also into their approach to the nature and this work, and also the tough time, because tough times are coming. And in 1986, our parents lost everything they had in half an hour because of a hailstorm, and it's a question of a few weeks ago, we had some frost in the area. As you well know, some other parts of Europe have been hit way more than we are, but it's a job under the sky.
Yeah.
And so it's truly so much about love and everything.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And two grandbabies now? Two?
Oh, 4.
4. Oh my goodness,
Yeah,
I'm behind.
and it's all Giuseppe and Sophie. So yeah, you were asking about sister-in-law. Yeah, I always call Sophie the Giuseppe's wife, my sister-in-law. But but yeah, so Giuseppe and Sophie, they got Lucia, who is 8, Aldo is 7, and then they got Mia, is turning 5, and then they recently got Teresa. She's a little bit more than 1 month old, and she's talking. But of course, with 3 older brothers, it's like siblings. It's easy. she wants to say her things in the word, but beautiful. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. So we've got some wine to taste here together.
Yeah.
So do we want to do the Moscato first or at the end?
I always did the Moscato at the end, but that's because it's our tradition to pair Moscato with dessert. But I also have to tell you something. That was a pairing I discovered. That was almost like a shock the very first time that happened, but then it's one of my favorites. We did a beautiful dinner years ago, and they wanted to do only Vajra wines. You probably remember there is this beautiful garage winery called Luigi Baudana, who became part of Vajra. Yes. And so with Luigi Baudana, we do also make a white wine. And so the idea was to make only Vajra white wines and wines, actually. We had no Riesling that night. We couldn't use the Dragon. And the guy said, why don't we use Moscato as aperitif? And I was like, really? Moscato as aperitif? But what he suggested was actually a quarter of a fig. And he put a little pinch of white pepper and prosciutto crudo on the top of that, pretty like more Parma style, a bit more salty.
Yeah.
And that was perfect. Since that moment, it's like, okay, I do understand why you can put one way or the other way around. Definitely, if you use like Thai food cuisine, Moscato is it's wonderful. But let's start with the very first red wine. And then we're gonna keep working until Moscato.
So we're gonna talk about Dolcetto here. We've got the 2019 Dolcetto d'Alba with this beautiful label.
I just got 2020, but yeah, I love that label. Marcia, what I love about that is that Dolcetto, this kind of Dolcetto is very different than Costa and Fossati. But already from the color you see, it's all about brightness. It's all about those beautiful aromatics of black pepper and the violets once again, because violets are one descriptor of the Dolcetto, and it always remind me the joy of springtime. So that's why those little birds on the label are kind of the perfect love to that hand. How to enjoy Dolcetto the best? Dolcetto is a traditional wine from our region, as I was saying before. And the point about Dolcetto is that it's really pairing with so many different kind of food. I find out it's one of the most gastronomic, most modern varieties. Mm-hmm. If I'm thinking, tonight I was super late for the connection, for dinner, for everything. It's like, thanks God, Matteo was cooking dinner for me. But what we had a super simple salad with an egg, and those are the kind of things that Dolcetto is looking for. In such a time where people are running and always being late and you don't have so much time for cooking, everything you can make with some veggies, some eggs, some pasta, it's simply perfect for Dolcetto. You can pair some poultry, some chicken. Yeah, super easy. And that used to be the wine that people were drinking possibly all day long, but especially we do have this time of the day. I don't know if you remember, Marcia. It's what we call the merenda sinoira. Merenda sinoira, let's see if I can text to you, but it's It's a beautiful tradition. Just next to you. It's a beautiful tradition, kind of like an early dinners. Like before people created aperitif in Piedmont, we used to have this kind of like a light dinner, 5:30, 6 p.m. Or the other parts of Italy, they tend to have, dinner at 7, 8, 9, the starter you go,
The
the
later it is.
later it gets. But, and what people were eating, a slice of salame, so charcuterie, some frittata, so some quiche, some omelette. So that's why sometimes I'm thinking it's like, this can be also dolcetto. Good dolcetto can be a perfect wine for brunch time, eggs Benedict, why not?
Yeah, for sure.
But
That's
nice
the thing.
pasta.
People think, oh, Nebbiolo and Barolo is this, classic, amazing red grape from Piemonte, but it's really the Dolcetto and the Barberos of Piemonte that are sort of those everyday wines that people are the locals are having with their food. So that's something that this sweet little one. The grape, not the wine, of course, but that's just something that's really not talked about so much. That Dolcetto is really easy to go with food. It's sort of left behind, as you said. It used to be the best sites, and now it's not. It's sort of this forgotten group.
Yeah, I'm so it's what you just said. I'm 100% agree on what you just said. The point is that because when people are traveling, I don't know if it's happened the same with you, but it's like the very first thing I'm learning is really about food. That's might be because it's my, food means survival, and I love food above all. So you learn is appetizer, in Italian is antipasti, and then pasta, primo, exactly, and then you arrive to dessert, and dessert is dolce. So I really feel that the most part of the time, people are just, when they read the word dolcetto, say, no, I don't want to have a sweet wine, especially red. It's like, what's going on? The point is that the name itself does not even belong from Italian. It's not even coming from Italian. It's coming from our dialect. And in our dialect, doucette means smooth.
Yeah.
And when you say that's a beautiful doucette, I mean, that's a beautiful hill, smooth. So a lot of light, but not too high, neither too low. And once again, that's how picky dolcetto is. And the other point is that it has some tannin, but it's not, they're not drying the mouth as some dolcetto, some Nebbiolo or some other variety are trying. They're feeling, I'm sure that you just tasted it, but if you scratch your tongue against the palate, it's kind of like a round, this gentle. This is dolcetto. And why people used to love dolcetto is it's also because they're used to drink way more than we do nowadays. So their question was about to have a wine that was easy to digest. And dolcetto is bright, but it's not over acidic. Think of a pizza.
Yeah.
A slice of pizza and your glass of dolcetto. Perfect, your homemade pasta, and you can put some beautiful spring and summer sauce when you can make almost like a ragu, but made with vegetables. Perfect. And homemade pasta and mushroom. So another thing is that this wine makes me think that's the perfect wine for vegan and vegetarian people as well. So versatile. So just give a chance to this wine. That's the only thing, I guess, that sometimes we have to say, people. And it is.
For sure. So for those of you watching that shop at our store, the Dolcetto is on the shelf for $25.99, on sale right now for $22.09. So a great price for you to try Dolcetto if you have not. And as I said, this is Dolcetto can age, which, something that I never thought of until I actually had that Dolcetto tasting at your winery, Francesca. So again, give Dolcetto a chance. Poor Dolcetto. Give it a chance.
Stacco un attimo gli auricolari, Matte, metto un attimo.
Okay. All right.
Sorry, Marcia. Why? Oh, yeah, my baby. I love it.
Okay. So
sorry that I'm trying to charge better my battery.
Okay.
So you know what Matteo said tonight?
What did Matteo say?
He said, Francesca, I put everything on the table. Dinner is ready, so you can come. We can eat something that you can connect yourself. I already put the wine on the table. So which one did you put on the table? So I put Claret JC. It's like, that's kind of the unique time of the year we can enjoy Claret JC because it's basically sold out everywhere in the world. But it's that time of the year. So Claret JC is very much about this tradition of research, and we did it with our family. This is more like the last chunk of research that we have done. It was really more about, with Giuseppe, we wanted to really know how people used to drink their Nebbiolo before Barolo wines were created. And then what we figure out is that, you know, both of us, we had the same experience. You've been to Barolo, so you might figure out where the school is, and basically 10 minutes walk for 6 years old kids far away, that's the castle. And when Giuseppe was 6 years old, when I was 6 years old, I'm very positive when Izzy was 6 years old, the very first school trip was from the elementary school into the castle of Barolo to teach us about wine and how Barolo wine was important. So I think that sometimes I'm thinking if social service from USA will know it, so we probably might be, you know, some people might be in trouble, you know. But, you know, it's like that has not to be a surprise, not even a scandal, because when you grew up in such a society where everybody's farmer, everybody's involved in winemaking, I can tell you, I was 6 years old and our school bus was driving to Castiglione Falletto from Barolo, then coming back through Cannubi Hill, and then going up to Bricco delle Viole. And I remember, I knew already, everything in Cannubi was Nebbiolo, you know? Yeah. And those were the last berry to be picked. And the crazy thing is that once we were at Bricco delle Viole, say, hey, why we are the last one? It's like, why our grapes are still on the vines, you know? You know, 8 or 6, and so I remember like talking with Giuseppe, say, hey, do you know when we're gonna pick our berries of Nebbiolo? You know, it's like I'm talking between a 6 years old girl and a 8 years old boy, you know? Yeah. And then waiting and wondering, and then after a couple of days, like asking Dad, say, hey, Dad, everybody already picked Nebbiolo, why we are the last one? And the answer of that was like, not yet, not yet, not yet. The reason is that it was waiting not only for the perfect maturation, but also for that magic moment where the temperature is dropping down. So it's only when the temperature drops down a bunch of times, you know, in this diurnal delta in between days and night, then the wine, especially the Nebbiolo, is getting its complexity. Otherwise, we would be like a beautiful person, handsome, better, but no personality. And what we really, really care is that personality. Yeah. And the beauty goes with that personality. That's no worry. But, well, you know, growing such a society, you know, years later, talking with Giuseppe, we had this memory of our teachers saying, you know, before people created Barolo wines, they used to mistake in doing winemaking. And the point is that when you're 6 years old and that's your teacher, you're taking for granted everything they're saying. But then when you're 20, 30, then you start to realize human beings are always looking for the best. So why? Possibly the wine was made in a different manner. So a friend of ours coming from Sacramento, California, his name is Daryl Corti from Corti Press. He mentioned, you know, we know that he used to come in 1970s to buy Erbalucci di Caruso to be imported in California. And that's really something issue, you know. Very few people sometimes in the wine business, or just few people from Piedmont knows about Erbalucci, but it used to be one of the most incredible white wines we have and we still have in the area. Yeah. Well, so we know that he traveled a lot. He knows that chunk of story that our father didn't know, because our father learned to do winemaking in 1970s. So everything was before is not something that is super familiar with somehow. He knows he's an extremely smart person, so he did as much as he could, but was cool to exchange ideas with somebody who, as you know, John just brought us, the man is a legend. Yeah, because I absolutely, you know, I grew up with this memory of, you know, Daryl Corti from Corti Brass, and well, we asked Daryl, and Daryl told us, hey guys, did you ever read the diaries of Thomas Jefferson? I say, oh my goodness, like Thomas Jefferson? Yeah, we are familiar, is like one of the very first presidents of the United States, but like why we should know his diaries? And then we discovered Thomas Jefferson spent a lot of time in Europe. And while he was in Paris, he ate Italian rice. And since it was farmed in Golden, California, he said, hey, Golden Carolina, sorry. He basically and found the Italian rice to be so different. He decided to ride down across the Alps. He stopped by in the town of Torino on the way to go to Vercelli, where is the area where it's a beautiful area to produce rice. And while he was in Torino, they offered him a glass of wine made out of a grape called Nebbiolo. But the way he described the wine was so different than a classic Nebbiolo. He described as a wine being brisk as a wine of Champagne, dry as a Claret of Bordeaux, pleasant and sweet Madeira. And we look at each other and say, hey, the guy was drinking extremely well, no doubt. But the three of them together as a way to describe Nebbiolo, I don't know. And then we start to break the word, because that's how we are. We love to go to dig down into the details to understand. And that's also our approach to tradition. It's like, we really think, you could say, is following the tradition only when you do really understand why people used to do certain things. Otherwise, it's just copy and paste, but then you won't be able to truly help the nature and the vine to react to how the weather is changing, because it's always changing. Well, to go back to Thomas Jefferson and to this, his quote, he came to Torino in 1787. Barolo wines were created around 1830s. And the point is that we started to break this quote down. And Claret was easiest part, and that's why it's spelled so clearly on the label, because people used to say that the Nebbiolo was very light in color, and people used to say that the Claret was the light style version of Bordeaux. Madeira is also very interesting, because when you go back and find some description from Barolos from 1940s, they're often described to be marsalati, so to taste like marsala. And Madeira and marsala, basically the same winemaking style. So about oxidation, very positive, was kind of like a mistake, but possibly through the mistake they discovered that those let's say resin aromatics, dry nutty aromatic, were helping to get a little bit extra sweetness to the wine itself, or at least a feeling and an impression of. But then Champagne really made our mind to explode until we decided to make a Champagne style. We did for 2 years. Kevin, who was so gentle to help us before, he definitely, you should ask him, Kevin, I was like, next time, next connection. But we opened some bottles with him last time. We didn't degorge because anytime we were trying to degorge, the 100% Nebbiolo was way too bone dry. And we say, no, we have to make something gentle. We have to make something that people can fall in love with. And that's how our sparkling rosé born, the Nostra Signora della Neve, NS of the snow, basically, the Virgin Mary of the snow. But that sparkling rosé is now 60 Nebbiolo and 40% Pinot Noir, and stays 65 months on the list. Extremely long aging, even longer than the Barolo. But that's an extremely gastronomic wine. But because we put Pinot Noir, there was not Thomas Jefferson. So we did further research, and we found the winemaking notes dated 1606. And what we discovered is something crazy. First of all, people were keeping, for the most part of the time, the cask outside the cellar. That's why one of the improvements behind that Juliette Colbert did was to bring the cask inside, which, if you think November is the time of picking Nebbiolo, can be pretty cold. And say, like, why they were leaving the cask outside? It's like that thing was never fermenting. And they were suggesting to keep moving the wine from one cask to another. And the point is exactly that. They didn't want the wine to be bone dry. They wanted to arrive in springtime with some residual sugar. And so with the temperature of springtime, the wine was finishing its fermentation into the bottle. So they were able to keep that spritz. That's why Thomas Jefferson talked of Champagne. And everything you have in your glass, it's about this story. It's about a completely different manner to us, because I personally grew up with the Nebbiolo bone dry, with the idea of single vineyard Barolo, when the story is about, was always been about blending of different vineyards, different sites, so to create the harmony. Well, the Claret JC is a jump in the story, but above all, is a jump into a cellar in November time during fermentation, because everything you can smell here, it's a beautiful, bright, aromatics you can smell into the cellar. And I love Claret JC because it's really like a, you know, biting a beautiful peach or apricot just when it's mature, that, or, you know, all the pulp is exploding in the mouth. You know, the smell is, that's what it's reminding me about. And then you have all the characteristic of Nebbiolo. So you have the tannins, but those tannins are really more on the side of your tongue. And the cool things about those bubbles is that you can really play around it. If you stir Claret JC pretty chill, like let's say white wine, pretty much, you won't feel the bubbles at all. But then you just let the glass on the table, talk with your friends, just get a few degrees more, and the bubbles are getting up. And so how to pair this wine with? It's like deep fried food, it's pretty killer. Barbecue, pulled pork meat is the kind of stuff. But if we talk about Italian food, I don't know if you, I'm sure you had some oliva alla scolana, Marcia, while you were traveling around Italy, you know, typical from Marche. Those are stuffed olives with a bit of meat and some spices. With this wine, yeah, you have so many different aromas. So it's more like a dangerous wine to drink at home. That's the only thing I have to say.
This is actually, you know, the first time I tried this, I was really fascinated, you know, with this effervescence that was coming out, you know. Even so, when I first opened this, I tried it, you know, and that, like, you know, the effervescence, the bubbles, and then I did chill it, so it has a little bit of a chill on it. And you're right, they're not there. And then this, you know, carbonic maceration that we have, a little bit of that whole cluster pressing that comes, that gives this beautiful, beautiful, you know, fuchsia colored wine that comes from that whole cluster pressing. It's a really, really cool wine. So I'm really glad that you guys did that. And again, I love the connection. Thank you for telling that story about Thomas Jefferson, because it really makes this wine really make sense, I think.
Yeah, the name itself, Claret, is really like, you know, the French people will spell it claret with a final T instead of an accent on the E. JC stands for Thomas Jefferson and Darrow Corti, but also Giambattista Croce, who is this guy who was writing this winemaking note in 1606. But the cool thing, some months ago, I was looking, I had the bottle in front of me, and I say, you know, Juliette Colbert, so the lady who created Barolo, same time as Camillo Benso Conti Cavour, the two were working on the same project with completely different purpose. Juliette Colbert was really the one that created, you know, like a past and a future out of Nebbiolo, because it's out of that people start to age Nebbiolo, do longer fermentation probably into the cask, and the casks were inside the cellars, you know, and then they were aging the wine, and she started to make something crazy. So then one day the King of Italy met her and say, Marchesa Juliette, I heard you're making a beautiful wine. I don't know why. I didn't get the chance to try it, you know. And if you ever land, the best way to arrive to Barolo area is really to land in Torino, and then 40 minutes drive south from the city center, you're going to be into Barolo area. So it's extremely easy and fast, you know. But imagine in 1830s, you know, once she heard that, she had the time of basically a few days to put together enough wine, and she sent a cask called a carra. So it's a cask you can put on a truck, basically, if it's not that the truck were 2 or 1 cow carrying the truck. But she sent to the King of Italy, you know, 325 casks of wine. So imagine this parade. Imagine like to look outside the windows and to see 325 casks of wine, you know, right in front of you. Like that, I'm very positive staying to the story. And she said exactly the numbers of the day of the year, apart the 40 day of Lent, because the King of Italy was very libertine. She was very Catholic. So she sent him back a message as well. It's like, you better respect Lent, otherwise you will run out of wine you won't have for all years around. So JC can be also Juliette Colbert. So the name itself is carrying this full story of before Barolo and after Barolo.
That's really great. And now I have something else to tell people when I sell this wine. So that's fantastic. I appreciate that. So this is $29.99. So to get yourself into a Nebbiolo, if you've never tried Nebbiolo, it's a great place to start at $29.99. On sale right now for $25.49. So pick up a bottle of Claret JC and you will find out how gorgeous this wine is. And if you've been listening to this and you hear the story, it will make even more sense and the wine will be even more beautiful, because wine is all about stories, and that's really what makes wine beautiful, and tasting with friends is a part of the experience as well. So
Marcia, if I can suggest something, it's like the coolest things would be to have to buy 1 bottle of Claret and 1 bottle of Barolo, and to see the past and somehow the present of this beautiful variety. So especially because you were saying to enjoy with friends. Once you're enjoying with friends, it's also a good chance to discover and dig into and comment and discover what we like more.
Yes, for sure. So, which is a nice segue into, I know that I was not able to get some Brico della Viole 2016 because, of course, we know 2016 is a fantastic vintage for Barolo. But I am getting some Rivera, so I'm excited about that. So that's it. We talked about maybe opening a bottle for today's tasting, but it didn't arrive in time. So that's fine. It'll be on the shelves next week. So those of you that are really into Barolo can come
Guys,
see me.
you're gonna have 1 bottle more on the shelf. Let me say.
Yeah.
I'm gonna share 1 bottle with you next time you're gonna be in Barolo. Don't worry. Saving 1 bottle for you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thanks, Francesca. All right. And last but not least, let's talk about our little Dolce Moscato d'Asti. Here we are. So I've got the little half bottles here.
I have the half bottles as well. I love this size indeed, Marcia, because I can put into the fridge and can stand, and the screw cap is perfect because you can open and close, and on just if you want to have a little sweet something at the end of the meal without getting a dessert or getting whatever, that is the best way. And as well, probably remember, this is the secret energy drink in Piemonte.
Somebody mentioned that on a comment. They're like, it's the best energy drink ever. So I was like, oh, that's an interesting comment.
I love with a straw, like very fresh, with a nice straw, and straight into the mouth. So this Moscato is made with old vines. And if you think, sometimes I guess anytime we see the word Moscato, what we do expect is something extremely sweet and sticky. But a good Moscato is not about that. It has to be sweet because, the concentration of the oldest vines. But then the bubbles are not the only good thing about that, because the bubbles are helping to clean your mouth, to polish the mouth, but then it's about minerality and a good structure. And once you have all those 4 components, then you can really play around. So then you can really pair with the savory food, with the dessert, and the dessert can just be a cup of strawberry. And instead of putting like sugar on the top or lemon juice, if you have some leftover from your previous bottle, that could be a good way to top and just to toss your strawberry into that with peaches. It's like, according to the different fruit is coming, the different season. But then the traditional way to have Moscato, as I was saying, is with dessert. And the kind of dessert we are pairing is usually hazelnut cake. And sometimes we do make the zabaione. Do you say zabaione the same way in English? Zabaione is like when you take the yolk and you whip them with sugar until it's getting very fluffy and almost very light. And then you start to cook bagno-marie until with the temperature is getting even more fluffy. In that moment, you open your bottles of Moscato and you keep whisking, you say, keep whipping up. You pour a little bit of Moscato inside. You're making this crazy, super energetic warm cream that with the hazelnut cake, it's impressive. If let it chill, it can be also a beautiful summer thing for your hazelnut cake.
Yes, and of course, hazelnuts grow like crazy in Piemonte, so it's a natural thing to pair as well. So
that's true.
Yeah. So we had created some Christmas Advent calendars with 12 little bottles of wine. So this was one of the wines that I featured in one of the calendars, this little Moscato. I had a sparkling calendar, and this was the number one wine that you would have opened to start your calendar, this little Moscato d'Asti from your winery. So we have the 2017 still. So it's a little bit of an older vintage, but hey, it's still lovely and fresh.
That's exactly, you know, Marcia, is exactly the same thing with Dolcetto. People think you have to have the last vintage, but it's not. And I will tell you, on New Year's Eve with Isidoro, we opened a bottle of 2012 of Moscato. So the only, let's say, bad thing that can happen when a Moscato is getting older is that you can lose a little bit of the bubbles. But then it's exactly when the beautiful structure is coming out. Then it's where you discover it's not about bubble and sugar, it's about minerality and complexity. And the cool things, you know, we'd say Moscato is one of the aromatic grapes. So basically, it's the only one of the few berry that you can bite. And when you're biting the berry of those aromatic grapes, you can have an idea of the final result because it's kind of like 1-to-1. And well, every single vintage is different. So that's almost like let's say a competition I'm giving to you, but it's like to discover from vintage to another vintage, which is the main fruit. So the very first time we produced this Moscato, the very first vineyard we had was coming from a place called Mango, like, you know, like the fruit.
Mango.
Second vineyard is Santo Stefano Belbo. But I was so impressed in the very first vintage because the Moscato was tasting as mango. I said, oh my goodness, what's going on here? And I remember I was a little kid, but I was like, okay, this is what aromatics, you know, is about, you know, 1-to-1 and impressive. But then, as you well know, it's never ending story. It's about keeping sipping, sharing, and putting out quarts. And the more friends you have, the most fun it is. And
I know. I love this. Johnny's got here about macerate some fresh summer fruit in a bowl of Moscato for an hour. That sounds delicious. So I might have to try that.
Yeah. There are so many things to do. It's like, and it's just about having fun. But to give you an idea, I was talking about hazelnut cake, but the other traditional dessert is the panna cotta.
Yes.
And panna cotta is, let's say, is probably 97% double cream with a little bit of sugar and eventually some vanilla and jelly. So extremely rich, you know.
Yes.
The only thing is really pairing beautifully with this dessert is Moscato, because it's gonna be sweet with sweet, and then it's about refreshing. But these bubbles, this minerality, you know, as we were saying, like Thai food cuisine, even some extremely salty oyster can work beautifully with this wine. So if you have the quality inside and you definitely have into that bottle, just experiment.
Yeah, it's fun. So again, we talked about Moscatos being an aperitivo before, but you know, with the dolce at the end of the meal with your dessert. So it's really versatile in that way as well. So this little 375 ml bottle here, regular $13.99, on sale for $11.89. So again, for those who don't want to buy a full bottle, if you're the only one that's consuming wine in your house, this is perfect. Again, screw top. You can put it in your fridge and it's going to be good for a couple of days. So that's great. Thank you. Was there anything else that you wanted to tell us about Vajra, about what's happening in Piemonte right now? Anything else you want to share?
The only thing I can say is that we are so grateful that despite we cannot travel, friendship is not breaking, and we can take this chance to keep improving friendship and keep, you know, keeping those relationships close to our hearts. You know, so many things are happening. I would say it's the news of today is like officially restaurant we're gonna open again. Some of the restaurants have been closed for over a year. In Italy, we're not vaccinated yet, but it's little by little. People are willing to go back to dine and to drinks with friends. But the most beautiful things that we are keeping working hard and making our land, I would say, beautiful. And despite people couldn't travel to the area, you know, goods are traveling. So to make wine, you know, where you were mentioning Bricco delle Viole, and then Ravera, and then there is a third baby, which is Costa di Rose, which is the last single vineyard from Vajra. You know, the top of the hill of the Valets, and Costa di Rose is the side of the roses. That's another incredible single vineyards Barolo. Well, those wine, they can tell about the area, about the variety, miles away. You know, so the wine can also be a beautiful way to keep this connection. So thank you very much for this time together.
Of course, I look forward to getting back to Italy. I miss it very much. And yeah, I hope to be back in Piemonte very soon, and I hope to see you very soon, whether it's next year at Vinitaly or at your winery in Piemonte. That would be fantastic as well. So
you're gonna see we're doing so much working around the winery because we have
I know.
free time.
I look forward to sharing that glass of Bricco delle Viole with you, Francesca. So
absolutely, absolutely. And next time we're going to be in the new tasting room, so it's going to be looking at the Bricco delle Viole, or better, we're going to walk up on the Bricco delle Viole and share the glass with the view, no doubt.
I look forward to that. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you for bearing with us with the technical difficulties. So ciao, ciao. Have a good evening.
I'm so sorry. Take care.